Today we have Gabriella with us, who is our key account manager for Inrego, and also Sebastian, that is sustainability manager at Inrego. So Sebastian, let's start this session.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I really like our partnership and the possibilities that lies within it. Such a large actor like you and us, I think together we can create a lot of value together. So I'm going to talk a bit about circular IT, sustainability, and also the problems with IT. Why does it have so high emissions? And what's the problems in the supply chains? So we actually need to take care of the products for a lot longer. So, just shortly about us at Inrego. We are working to decrease the carbon impact of companies, trying to prolong the lifetime of IT. And if you look historically, what we have done is we buy, we fix, we sell used IT. But more and more, we also try to be a circular IT partner to help our customers with the knowledge that they need on the climate impact, how can you work with circular IT, what's the money benefit, what's also the benefit the climate-wise. And if you look at supply chain, this is the supply chain of a laptop, and it's really complicated value chains, and that's part of the problem. So we take pretty much raw materials all over the world. We send them to Asia, where we manufacture things, and we transport them back. And for electronics, the transportation is not the problem, but it's more the energy demanding process of taking up the raw materials, all the fossil fuels that's burning when we're doing this. So it's a really complex value chain. And then of course, it's the social aspects connected to this. It's conflict materials. If you look at a phone, for example, 2% of the weight of a phone comes from cobalt, and about 70% of the cobalt globally comes from Congo. And there's a lot of areas there where the money goes to fund their local wars. So it's conflict minerals, it's bad working conditions, and also in the production of IT, it's long hours. It was famously noted a few years ago when a big manufacturer, they actually had to put in a policy for their employees not to take suicide. And why do people do that? Their life were better off taking suicide, and they got some money for their family. And when you come to that situation, there's something wrong. And it's the same thing also. This is in the new production, but also like the recycling. Recycling here in Sweden and the Nordics is really good. If you look in Africa, the recycling of IT is really bad. And I have a friend who was in one of these sites in Rwanda, and so it's basically big piles of IT, and people walk around without shoes in them to take out the valuable materials. And he asked them, well, why don't you give them protection gear? The answer was that they have done that, but they sell the shoes for food for the day instead of protecting themselves in the long run. So it's really a situation which it's impossible for us in the Nordics to understand how they live. When you don't have food for the day, you do everything to get that. And it's working conditions, it's problematic. So if you look, so we're producing things with things all over the world. We use them rather shortly, and we scrap them. And in this field, like recycling is good, but recycling it cannot really get so much back in the loop. It's always a downcycling. For example, the steel that we put into a building will not be a steel for another building. It will become something lesser the next time and lesser the next time. So what we really need to do here is to extend the life of IT and give the product more uses. And I think we've seen this during the pandemic also, that a lot of people here, when you buy the new IT, you maybe use the laptop for 4 years now instead of 3 years. It was problem with deliveries during the pandemic, and a lot of actors realized, well, you can use it for 4 years. And there's also a lot of thoughts about how you cannot reuse things. It's a 5-year-old laptop. Well, nobody wants it. If it's an 8-year-old laptop, nobody wants it. But with Inrego, we can reuse up until around 8 to 12-year-old laptops. So there's still value in them. There's still actors who want them. I myself, I sit at an 8-year-old laptop, and that fills my needs. And coming back to like IT and the climate impact. So if you take a laptop, for example, we see that 80% of the climate impact from a laptop comes from the production. 30% comes from the use phase, and 6.8% transportation and recycling is really, really little. And this really shows like what should we do to decrease the climate impact of IT. And then take back, of course, is a really, really important solution. So we can, after the first use, we can take it back and give it a second use. And then we can really decrease this big pie. And if you look at this, the use one also, there's a lot of people, not so much anymore, but there's still a bit thought about, well, if I buy a new energy efficient one, it will make up for the production. But it's been studied done, and to buy a new laptop and make up for energy efficiencies, you need to use that laptop for 20 years. And I haven't seen so many laptops that's in use for 20 years right now, maybe in the future. It's really the production that's a major part of the carbon emissions. And this was studied by IVL, the Swedish Environmental Institute, and they saw that to produce a laptop, we need 1,200 kilos of waste that's dig up from the earth. For example, if you need a bit of copper, you don't only take up that kilo of copper, you take up tons of materials from the earth. And for all the materials in a laptop, we need to take up 1,200 kilos from the earth. And also together with them, we did a calculation to see, so what's the climate impact of IT, but also what's the benefit of reuse. So when you do this take back, what is the carbon reductions that you're doing? And we see it's 280 kilos of carbon emissions for and savings for reusing a laptop and 55 for a smartphone. So what is the circular economy? It's basically another way of working. It's rethinking the linear. This is pretty much a linear economy. We take raw materials, we produce it, we use it, we scrap it. But we try to keep them in use for as long as possible, maintaining them. Maybe we can have them longer at a customer. Maybe we can have another business model. If we sell the product as a service, we might want them to use it for longer as well. Reuse them, that's reuse in its current condition. For example, here in Sweden we have Blocket, Tradera, and acts like that, where you don't fix them. But then of course you have refurbishment, which is what we are doing. So we're actually taking the products, we're looking at them, we're repairing them, we're giving them a new warranty. And I think that's really important for circular solutions, that it needs to feel as safe as to buy in another way. And recycling, of course, it's good, but in the circular economy, recycling is the option of last resort. It's good. We need that. We need the materials to go back. We need them to go into production again. And I think we're seeing some actors here. For example, Apple with their robots, we're actually doing a lot of good. And the problem with recycling is, for example, if you take all the laptops and all the smartphones that you sell and you put them together, you mash them, and then you try to take things out. That's really, really difficult. But what Apple is doing is they're taking their phones back, and then they can take this screw and put it over here, they get this part and put it over here, and then the recycling process can actually be really good. So the collection is really important, and I hope that we will see more and more actors like that also to collect things then, because then we can have the input here can actually be from the products we sell can go back into this and become new parts, become new, so we can actually decrease the emissions of the new production also. So just short about us. We have been working with circular IT since 1995. We're about 160 employees and 400 million Swedish kronor revenue. There's a lot of CO2 savings, and we handled about 360,000 products last year. Of course, if you look at us also, we have climate impact. If you look, you calculate these in different scopes. If you look at scope 1, it's the emissions that we have, for example, by the truck that we're owning and driving. If you look at scope 2, it's the energy to our buildings. And I know some of you have been there. It's rather big buildings. There's a lot of energy needed but that's still a small part for us. The big parts here come from us, and that's when we buy spare parts. We need to buy a lot of SSD to repair the products. We need to buy batteries to make them better. So that's about half of these emissions for us. And then the other is the transportation, the logistics between your customers to us, and then when we sell the products. And we also, of course, try to make that in as a good way as possible. And then there's some smaller things as well. But I think it's important also to show that, for example, look here, we have 1,900 tons of CO2 emissions. But if you compare that to the good that we are doing together with our partners, we have 60, this was 2001, and 67,971 tons of CO2 savings. And this is what we're doing together with our customers, our partners like you. So we're actually creating a 35 times bigger benefit for society than we're actually having a negative impact. And I think that's really great, and I'm looking forward to see what this partnership can deliver in the future also. If you look on, for example, the Paris Agreement, if you look on how much we need to decrease the emissions, this is how much we need to decrease the emissions every decade. It's pretty much decreased by half every decade to have a chance of delivering on the goals that we're setting there, and actually to keep the planet on a place where we humans have seen the planet before. So if it goes beyond that, we don't know what it is. We could live and thrive there, but we don't know. We haven't lived in that situation. And so we need to decrease the carbon emissions by 50% to 2030, and a further halving to 2040. And if you look at these, it's actually not that difficult to make this first halving. For example, if you just have a take back on every product we sell, we're getting close to this. And if you prolong the lifetime a bit, you're getting around here. But then it's going to be difficult going from 50% to 25%, from 25 to 12%, because then we're actually going to have to rethink the system. Then the producers, they actually need to rethink how they are producing things. They need to, as we talked about, take the old materials in and put it into the products again. They need to make products that last longer. They need to really rethink how we're doing things. But the first halving here is rather easy, and we can do that with behavioral change. And I think that's impressive that we can already do this today. And electronics also stands for like 2 to 3% of the global emissions. So we can actually make a big impact together. So we have looked on these kinds of questions together with researchers to see the climate benefit. And this is also, of course, something that we're reporting to you. For every product that you send in to us, we report that. Both in if it's reused, where it's sold, but we're also reporting the CO2 emissions saved by doing this. And we do that down to the spare part. if you send a laptop to us, but the screen is broken, you're going to get a saving of a laptop minus the screen. So we do this to the component of the laptops. And I'm not going to go through this in detail, but this is the equation that we're using, and this is the linear way that we're producing. We're taking out resources, we transport them, we produce them, we use them, and then we scrap them. And what we're seeing here then is, well, if we put them to us, we don't have to actually make a new laptop, and this one can replace that. But of course, we have new emissions for the transport to us and our processes, which we are calculating and then also reporting to our customers. You can see, just to show, for example, a notebook has 280 kilos of carbon savings, a desktop 470, monitor 420, a phone has 55, and it's usually connected to how big they are. So reusing a monitor can have like 10 times the impact of a phone. And the laptop is half of that. So when we're talking with our customers, we're trying to talk about what's the most important thing to do, both money-wise, what can you get most paid off by us, but also what's the most important for the climate. And then we see, for example, that the screens that doesn't have too much high value, you can use that one more year. But if you look on these phones, we really need to get them back to us. We need to reuse them, and there's a high value for you. We're looking with this with a customer, and they were wondering, well, like, they had about 100,000 Swedish kronor in deductions because of the products were not in the best condition. And well, they send in a lot, so it's not that big. But then if you put that into comparison with that, they would have gotten about 1 million if they sent in all their phones. So what should they focus on? Decreasing that 100,000 to maybe 70 or 50, or to actually make sure to get all the phones into reuse, where they could get about 1 million Swedish kronor. So if you actually compare these things, and what things should you do because of the money, and what should you do because of the environment, and to always have this in mind. So we have looked on this together with consultancies in here in Sweden, climate consultancies, and about 15% of tjänstebolag, a service company, a company that doesn't have their own production, about 15% of their emissions actually comes from IT. And we're seeing now that a lot of actors are calculating the climate emissions. And when they're doing that, they're seeing, okay, well, if we're going to decrease our bit, we actually need to look at IT. And I think that's pretty cool. We're having companies call to us and say, well, we just measured and we want to work with circular IT now. That didn't happen for 2-3 years ago. But it's a change happening right now, and it's driven by a lot of actors setting science-based targets. And when you set these science-based targets, you need to do this. And also for us at Inrego, we have our big partners also put this pressure on us, that we need to set our science-based targets, we need to measure our emissions in order to be their partners. And when a lot of actors do this together, it's creating a big impact. And there's a big difference in the circular economy. And if you look at the customers, if you look historically, it's been you bought refurbished because you wanted something for a lesser price. That was the only reason. And you were a bit ashamed of it. You didn't want to talk about it. You didn't want to show it to anybody. There's a shift there right now, where you actually want to buy refurbished, you want to sell used IT, and you want to use that as a part of your employer branding. And when you're doing that, it's a change in mindset. You don't only do it because of saving money, of paying less for your IT, but actually create a change. And think we're seeing a difference right now in the business sector. Before, how we looked at sustainability was we have business and then we do some corporate social responsibility. We have our normal business and then we donate a little bit to charity. I think that's good, you should do that. But what we're more seeing is that sustainability is business and that you integrate that into the core business. And when you do that, it's a whole other different action that's happening. And when you put the sustainability to the core, and of course, I think in this partnership is showing that also when you put the take back into the offerings to your customers and trying to create the circle, and then you can create so much bigger difference than the traditional when the sustainability was a bit outside. And I think this is a big shift that we're seeing right now in society. And as I mentioned, as more and more are calculating their emissions and they're seeing that IT stands for 15%, and out of those 50%, 80% come from the production. They're looking at ways on how can we reduce this. And we also calculated that to see, for example, how many laptops can we provide for the same climate impact as a new one. And that's around 6 ones. And we still need new IT. We're going to need to put new IT on the market, but we also need to keep them in use. We need to find circular solutions for that. And we can also find profitability in doing that, in creating this second loop, and in a lot of times also the third loop. So that's actually 85% less emissions than new. And but biorefurbishment is not enough. When you look on circular IT, you need to have the full pictures. You need to consider what you're buying. When you're buying new, that you're buying a product that can be repaired, you can replace the battery, you can put it into these loops. But also to use it for longer, and of course having this take back and having this full circle. So you need to have a complete picture of doing this. And as I said, like people wonder, well, is there actually value in a 5-6 year old laptop? Well, if you look at the laptops that we are putting on the market, and that's the laptops between 3 to 6 years old, we actually want to buy all of that back when we have put it to our customers for 3 years. So there's still a value in that IT 9 to 10 years later that we are happily paying for. It's not going to be as profitable as the buybacks are for a 3, 4, 5 year old laptops. They're going to create a really good profitability, but it's still a profitability. It's still something that goes around, and there's a lot of actors who still want these products. And what we are doing more and more also, this is a service that we released just recently, where we are going to our customers to actually measure their IT. We look on the climate impact, we try to analyze that and give their recommendations on how should you work, both economically, but also environmentally, and going in there and doing this. And this actually came from our customers. Before, we were an actor who came in. When you're done with your IT, you contact us, and you're happy with that. But the recent year, we got more and more questions also about, well, what products should we buy? What new products should we buy so we can get more paid by you when they come to you? And all of these questions are driving a change in us also, that we need to be a bigger expert on new also, which we are not, and happy to collaborate with others to find this. So which products should you put on the market that will create the circle? And it's a big difference. For example, if you look at the products that we sell about 25% in Sweden, about 75% globally. And the Swedish keyboard is not so wanted in Norway or in Finland or in the Netherlands. But a really important thing is just to be able to replace the keyboard. And in some laptops, you need to take out every single screw in the laptop to change the keyboard. In some, you can just click it out and put a new one in. So it's a really important thing how we design things for the circular economy so that it will actually have more uses. And of course, it's possible to take out every screw, but it costs a lot. And that's one of the biggest challenges in circular IT, that labor cost is high, especially in the Nordics and in Europe. And the circular economy is difficult to automate. The linear production, the new production has been automated. It has been perfected for a long time. But the circular economy is further off there. We actually had ABB at the facility to see, can we automate our process? And they said, if this was my money, I would end this now. Because they didn't see the possibilities, because it's so many variability. And automation is good on doing one thing a lot of times, but not doing the thing, but doing it differently, but almost the same. And so when we are doing these things, we're trying to show also, like, what's the CO2 savings, but also what's your CO2 emissions of the new IT that you're buying. How much new you're buying, how much you're sending in, how much is being refurbished, how much is being recycled. And to show this and try to guide our customers in circular IT. And I think this is the great thing with the sustainability circular economy, that you cannot do it alone and you need partnerships. With Inrego, we are good on reusing IT, but we are not good on selling new. We're not good on recycling. There's a lot of things that you need to find partnerships together. And together in our partnership, just last year, and last year was the year that we really got started, we had 52,172 kilos of CO2 savings in our partnership that we did together. And that's the equivalent of 948 phones being produced and about 26,086 bottles of wine. I think that's impressive and it's a great work, but I'm looking forward to seeing even bigger numbers next year, because I know that this partnership is just getting bigger and stronger. So I'm excited to see what we can do together the next year. So just to end this up, you think about purchase sustainable. Think about what you put onto the market, use it as long as possible, and reuse it when you're done. That's pretty much the things you focus on when it comes to circular IT. And it's not much more difficult than that. So thank you very much.